Thomas Sowell explained visually. Read the books, check out the YouTube videos. But for the people that might struggle with some of these concepts, I'm here to break it down for you with visual aids. Please subscribe, share, like the videos. Today we're going to talk about stimulating the economy by cutting taxes. This is from Dismantling America. This is the #1 book I would recommend for someone that doesn't know much about Thomas Sowell. It's a collection of essays, very short essays, a page or two. Very good if you have a short attention span, or maybe you just don't have a lot of time to sit down and read. I would suggest Dismantling America. That's where today's lesson comes from. We're going to focus on the 2008 economic collapse, the housing bubble crisis. What mistakes did the government under President Bush and Obama? And let's not make this video an attack on Bush or an attack on Obama. Let's just look at the government policies, learn from the mistakes, and then maybe make better decisions for the soon-to-be 2021 crash coming to a theater near you. So we're going to look at this crash, the collapse, and see how did the government try to stimulate the economy. The first thing that the government tried to do was to loan money to the bank, basically giving free money to the banks. And then the theory was, well, then the banks are going to loan it out, people are going to spend it, and that will stimulate the economy. But that did not happen. What actually happened was the government did, through the TARP program, loan tons of money to the banks, and then the banks sat on the money. You can blame the banks all you want, but in case you weren't aware, the economy was collapsing. It was a giant disaster. Banks were failing left and right. So if you ran a bank, you probably were going to hang on to that money. Problem number 2, the reason why the economy collapsed was because in the first place, the government was forcing these banks to make loans that they didn't necessarily need to or want to make. So here we are again. Hey, wait a second. Didn't we crash the economy because you were forcing us to make loans? And now your solution is to force us to make more loans? Yeah. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So they don't loan the money out. The economy does not rebound. So that was a failed attempt. Let's not do that again in 2021 or 2022. That's not stimulus. Oh, another thing to that, where did the government get this money that they gave to the banks for free? Oh, it was your money. So they took your money, loaned your money to the banks, and then the banks sat on your money. Even if they would have loaned out the money, that seems like a pretty roundabout way of stimulating the economy. So you're going to take my money, give it to the bank so they can give it back to me and charge me interest. What is going on? How about you just let me keep my money next time? Also, as Tom Sowell will say, just because you call it a stimulus plan doesn't make it a stimulus plan. This stimulus package did not stimulate the economy. Business spending dropped. Durable goods spending dropped. 23% fewer loans were made. This was the sharpest decline in lending since 1942. You had to go back to the Great Depression. They were given money with the sole purpose of loaning it out, and the banks made fewer loans than almost, not ever, but going back to 1942. So that's not really stimulus. You can say it's a stimulus, but if it doesn't stimulate, is it really stimulus? Number 2, what did the Obama administration try? And we've seen this before. You can see that it failed during the New Deal, but yet you have been taught that these public works projects stimulated the economy. It wasn't the case. You can look at the history. It wasn't the case. You have to dig down because they're not going to teach you that. Anyway, so we repeated that mistake. And guess what we will probably do in 2021 is repeat this public works. Oh, the government's going to create jobs. Government doesn't create jobs. At best, they transfer jobs from the private sector. Government doesn't create jobs. You need to create wealth to create jobs. The government does not create wealth. So here's how it works in theory. This is what the progressives and the liberals will tell you is that, well, the government's going to spend money on public works projects. That'll create jobs through these building of bridges, roads, dams, schools, you name it, whatever public works infrastructure program, it will create jobs and it will stimulate the economy. But it didn't happen in 2008. It didn't happen during the New Deal. It does not happen. You can look at the records. You can look at the data. Just look at the chart and you can see how long the Great Depression lasted and say, wait a second, I thought we created these public works jobs. I thought we created the Civilian Conservation Corps and all these different work programs, and the Depression just lasted longer. Maybe, just maybe those programs didn't work. You ever think about that? Like, wait a second, I thought these programs worked. Why did the Depression last so long? Because the programs didn't work. Let's focus, though, here on 2008 and the plan to do this over again. Why didn't it work? Well, just use common sense. Let's imagine you want to build a bridge or new roads or whatever project. Just think of that project in your head that you want to build. Guess what? You can't just wake up tomorrow and start building it. There's all kinds of planning, hearings, deciding what land. And a lot of these things are based on political decisions, on who and what seat and what part of the country needs what project done. It takes months, if not years, to get everything approved before an actual shovel hits the dirt. And even if that happens, you still have to get the equipment, get the project together, and it takes forever how long to actually do this project. These things take too long. If the economy collapses today and people are out of work and we need to stimulate spending, it takes too long to get the money to the people. Sure, it's nice to build roads, and sure, these infrastructure projects can work during normal times. Not saying that. What we're saying is, in the moment of a crisis, in the moment of an economic collapse like 2008, this is not a good way to stimulate the economy. Sure, you can use public works projects over a long run situation, but if we're trying to, in the middle of a crisis, get money inject it into the economy, to preserve the economy, to bring the economy back to life, this is not the way. It takes too long. This is not a good way to stimulate the economy, and it wasn't. It didn't work. You lived through this. There might have been some projects that went through in the long term, but nothing immediate that helped preserve the economy, nothing that immediately created a bunch of jobs. Even if the private sector wanted to build something, it takes a while for them to plan, let alone a public works project that has to be approved by various committees and through various hearings. And then we have to make sure that certain contracts go in and that everyone gets a fair shot to do this project. It's just not a good way to stimulate the economy. And the data backs it. What it is a good way is to win votes. And you can look and see that was the history of these public works projects in the New Deal. The people that got these projects and the people that are allowed to have these jobs were registered Democrats. And we're not picking on the Democrats. The Republicans will do the same thing. I had a friend for one summer, he worked with the Department of Transportation. How did he get that job? He was forced to register as a Republican. This is nothing new. This idea of graft, going back to Tammany Hall, and even before that, the spoil system of Andrew Jackson, and then in the New Deal, if you wanted this job in the South as an infrastructure, whatever project, you had to register and vote Democrat. That's how it works. That's how these public works projects, so they are very good at that, at acquiring political power. Awesome. And in the long run, building projects, sure, that's fine as well. But in the moment of crisis, which we will experience in 2021 or 2022, and people are out of work, and we need to inject money into the economy to get things going, this is the wrong plan. You can check out the Great Depression and the New Deal by Bob Murphy, the Politically Incorrect Guide. Gives you a really good understanding of these stimulus packages during the New Deal, these failed policies that didn't work. You'll never get from your textbook, which you'll never get from your public school teacher, which you'll never get from your university professors. You're not going to get this information. You're not going to get a real understanding of what did not work in the New Deal. Just read this book. It's really quick, easy to read. You can also follow him on Twitter or his podcast. 8% of the $335 billion bailout was spent in the first year during the 2008, 9, 10 economic collapse. Only 8%. So you pass a stimulus package and then you just sit on the money? I thought we're trying to stimulate the economy. I thought we're trying to save the economy in a time of crisis. But it didn't happen because we sent money into banks and we held money to slowly approve projects of building some road. 33%, only 33% was spent by the end of the second year. You want it now? It's not coming to you right now. We are going to need it now in 2021. We're going to need it when the real collapse happens, and there's not going to be time to wait. So what does Thomas Sowell say we should do? Cut taxes. Forget about loaning money to banks. Forget about public works projects. Cut taxes. Here's how it works. So we'll just use a picture online of an example of someone who makes $75,000 a year in New York. You take out their taxes. They have $2,000 left over. Well, you want to immediately stimulate the economy. You immediately want to get people spending money at firms so that firms produce more goods, so that firms are hiring more workers, and so that the economy, at the very least, is staying afloat. Not sinking, hopefully rising, but at the least staying afloat. You're not going to do that by letting money sit in banks. You're not going to do that by approving some public sector job down the road. Probably will make matters worse by just transferring jobs over in the public sector away from the private sector. So let's just cut taxes by half in this example. So $778 out of this one paycheck goes to federal taxes. So that means basically you're now only going to pay $389, or you get to keep $300. Now they're not going to literally cut you a check, but you get to keep $389 more dollars. So before your paycheck was $2,000-ish. Now it's $2,400. Yeah, I'm going to spend that money, and that will increase the production of goods, hopefully, and will then increase the need for more workers, and at least it will help the economy maintain. And this is instant. And people actually will probably spend this before they actually get the check because of credit cards, knowing that this money is going to come in. So there's no waiting. There's no months down the road for the project to officially, no, this is a very quick, instant way to stimulate the economy. This is actual stimulus. So in 2021, when our economy collapses, and I know I keep saying that because you know it's going to happen, it has to happen. And even if we have to do another COVID stimulus package, this seems like a better idea. Maybe we still need to do the UBI. That's fine, but we need to explore. This should be on the table. This is painless. This is easy. This is the way to go. Now, the argument against it is, well, cutting taxes is not going to help people that don't have jobs. And you're absolutely correct. We cannot solve every problem. There's going to be winners and losers. There are trade-offs. But the first thing that we have to talk about is, what is the plan? Is the plan to stimulate and save the economy? Or is the plan public assistance? Maybe we ought not try to do both at the same time. Maybe the appropriate measures and the prudent decision would be to pick one or the other. If you want to do public assistance, which you kind of did early in COVID, just cutting checks, fine. But if you're trying to stimulate the economy, maybe try not to do both. There's going to be trade-offs. Yes, the people without jobs are not going to benefit, but maybe in the long run it will work. So people are obviously going to say, well, we want to do both, right? That's the unconstrained mindset. That's the progressive point of view. That's the liberal, the modern liberal point of view, where we can solve all problems. There's just probably just a technicality. We'll eventually work it out. We are, masters. And so we can stimulate the economy and we can also provide public assistance. And the reality from the constrained mindset, the more conservative approach, is that you can't. You got to pick one or the other. You got to accept the trade-offs. And that unconstrained mindset that we can do everything, that we can save grandma and save the economy, we should all now know that that's just not the case. As Voltaire, and you'll hear from many economists, perfect is the enemy of good, or best is the enemy of good. We can't do both. And if we try to do both, we will do nothing in spectacular fashion, as they say. And everyone listening has experienced this. COVID has been a terrible moment for everyone, but it has taught the valuable lesson that the best is the enemy of good. You cannot save grandma and the economy at once. There are trade-offs. If we save grandma and we quarantine everyone, we got to kill the economy. We need to accept and understand that trade-off. And if we decide to just focus on the economy, then there will be losses of life. We have to be adults. This is a childish way of thinking that we can do everything, we can solve every problem. The unconstrained mindset is immature, it's adolescent. We have to be adults. We have to accept that there's tough decisions. And we do that on an individual basis. You listening, when you make decisions as an individual, you accept trade-offs. You understand you can't do everything. But for whatever reason, when it comes to public policy and government making promises, we believe that, we can just do everything. No. I mean, you teach this to kids, like you can stay at home and study tonight, or you can go out and have fun with your friends. So if your social life does well, you're not going to do well on the test. Now, you can do well on the test tomorrow and study all night, but your social life will suffer. There are trade-offs. It's opportunity cost. You cannot have everything. We teach this to children. We know it as individuals. But when it comes to the biggest, most crucial decisions in our lifetime, we then pretend that, no, we can do everything. And so the quick answer, not to go too deep into, well, what if we did try to do everything? You're more than likely going to run into rampant runaway inflation, which we're already experiencing, which is probably going to lead to the next 2021 crises, meaning probably multiple. Now, I'm not going to go into MMT and try to understand that, but long story short, we're probably running inflation. The government just can't spend money that it doesn't have, but we're not going to go into that conversation. There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs, and this is what we run into for the next stimulus that we will deal with. The last one didn't work in 2008, so we can print UBI checks, but if we print UBI checks, it doesn't necessarily create jobs. So those people are still unemployed. That's a trade-off. Yes, we're going to help you temporarily, but it doesn't create jobs. Another trade-off of doing the public assistance is it doesn't necessarily rebound the economy. It doesn't necessarily stimulate the economy because we could run into runaway inflation. maybe it helps the economy rebound. Maybe if people are buying goods at firms, it will create jobs eventually. Maybe. But more than likely, it's just going to be printed money, and we just lived through this. We just lived through printing out money, didn't really create jobs. Now, I know there's not a lot of rules apply when we're forcing businesses to be shut down, but there are trade-offs when we just give out checks. When we just have a public assistance welfare program, and we experience this every day with the regular welfare programs before COVID. They don't necessarily create jobs. The regular welfare programs didn't necessarily boost the economy. So there are trade, but people will be able to pay their mortgage and etc. If we go the tax cut route, what is the trade-off? Well, it doesn't help people that don't have jobs, but it does maintain the economy. It maybe possibly boosts the economy. We'll see. Now, in the long run, as the economy grows, those jobs should come back. But in the immediate need, and in the middle of a crisis, there's a lot of immediate need. The trade-off is it does not help necessarily the people that are unemployed. You just have to accept these trade-offs, and we have to have an adult conversation about what we want to do and what is the best decision. There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs, and you have to decide which one you think is prudent. Now, an argument can be made that for this person that doesn't have a job, if you cut taxes, if I cut taxes, and you know that, now, again, I don't want to give the idea that we're not compassionate towards the people that are unemployed. I don't want to give the idea that we don't feel any empathy for people that have lost work. What we're saying, now take COVID and kind of set that aside. Let's talk theoretical here. Let's have an a priori understanding of what's going to happen if you cut taxes. If you cut taxes, meaning that if you get a job, you're more than likely to keep, or you're going to keep more of your paycheck, then there's more of an incentive to get a job. Right now, with taxes being what they are, it's whatever. But if you find out tomorrow that, oh, I'm going to only be taxed at 10% or maybe none, then you're going to be more proactive about getting a job. Again, I don't want to give the impression that no one's looking for jobs, that people have quit, even though some people have given up. But those people that have given up, if you tell them, oh, by the way, if you get a job, you're going to pay almost no taxes whatsoever, they're very likely, or at least more likely to look for a job than if you just give them a check. I mean, let's just compare the two situations here. You have cut taxes to stimulate the economy, or let's just give out UBI checks. Which scenario is more likely to result in people looking for work? If you just give them a UBI check, that's not an incentive to work. If anything, it's a disincentive to work. It's not encouraging you to work. And we saw this with a $600 unemployment check. As long as you're getting a $600 unemployment check, think I just want to stay unemployed, especially if a $600 unemployment check each week is more than I earn normally. But this, it's not a free handout, but if you can get a job, you're going to keep more. So obviously, if you're looking long-term, and if you're looking more just towards mental health and getting people working, getting people active, this would be the option. Is it as compassionate or empathetic as this? Maybe it is, though. Maybe it is a little bit more than just giving people free money and not really lifting them up, not really helping them out, not really encouraging them. Now, you can break this down however you want based on your political view, but it's just a concept that you do want to consider when you're comparing the future stimulus, because this is going to happen. It's bearing down on us. And this is March 2020, before we were shutting everything down. Right at the beginning, Steve Cortez said, hey, here's the answer. We're running into a really bad situation. No income tax. At the very least, we're going to keep the economy afloat by letting people keep their money. He suggested three things. Two of these, because he does have the Trump administration's ear. Double unemployment benefits. They listened to him. This was March 17th, 2020. Postponed student loan repayments. They listened to him. They did not listen to him when he said suspend middle and lower income taxes. Apparently, that was a little too much for them. But we cut every American a $1,200 check. I mean, who in March thought that we were literally going to cut everyone other than Andrew Yang thought that this really could happen? So if that could happen, is this that crazy? And this isn't even the government giving money away like it is with $1,200. It's just government not taking your money. This is something we're going to want to explore because the crisis is coming. We cannot inflate all of these bubbles, mortgage bubbles, credit card bubbles. I mean, how long have we been hearing about the auto loan bubble, the student loan bubble? This is real money that's not getting paid. It wasn't getting paid before. The defaults were crazy before this crisis. Now it's something like, I haven't kept track of back rents, back mortgages, student loans. I guess that's going to be even because a lot of this, but it's still private student loans. Either way, all that stuff has to get paid back. Back utilities, The bubble has been blown up so much in the last year. On top of that, we've inflated the currency so much, and there's no sign of jobs coming back anytime soon. So the crash is coming in 2021. We've got to make a decision. What are we going to do? Are we going to just give money to banks again? Are we just going to try to stabilize whatever institutions we decide and think that, oh, well, they're going to create jobs? Is the public sector going to create jobs better than the private sector? Are we going to try to create public works projects again? Or will the Biden administration or whoever is in power learn the lessons from Thomas Sowell? Just cut the taxes. Listen to Steve Cortez, just cut the tax. Why not just give it a try? You don't even have to go zero taxes. Why not just cut them in half? Why not? But instead, we could probably predict the 2021 recovery is not going to work. The media is going to tell the government's creating jobs. And just like you probably were told in 2008, 2009, 2010 that, yeah, they were doing all this work, even though your eyes told you that it wasn't happening, that people were unemployed, that the recovery from 2008 to 2016 didn't happen. It was very slow, despite what politicians were saying, despite what the media was saying. And you're going to hear that all over again. You have to trust your eyes and watch the failed recovery. Because I can go ahead and tell you what they're going to do now. It's not going to be your traditional public works project. It's not going to be your traditional infrastructure, roads, bridges, canals. We don't do canals anymore. You know what it's going to be? It's going to be the Green New Deal. This is going to be the thing that saves us. We're going to create not we, the public sector is going to create, the government is going to just pay for all of these new jobs. Unfortunately, you can read Michael Schellenberger's Apocalypse Never. He is an environmental activist, but he is not an environmental alarmist. There's a huge difference. That is the central piece of that book. I've got a video up at youtube.com/social studies that talks about that and warns of this problem coming up, because what it is it's just yet again another giant power roll up, and just another taking our money, giving it to corporations, global corporations, giving it to massive giant institutions, more power to the ruling class, less small business, you name it. That's more than likely what's going to happen. When the solution, well, not the solution, but a best case scenario is very simple. Just cut the taxes. Maybe you don't save the economy, but at least we don't drive it into the ditch. Green New Deal, we're going to drive it into the ditch, and the results are not going to be what we've been promised. This is Thomas Sowell explained visually. Go check out Dismantling America. Check out his other YouTube videos so you can get it from the horse's mouth. I'm here to try to explain some of these concepts with visual aids. I've got an American History 1 curriculum. I've got an entire American History 2 curriculum, civics, economics, you name it. Other books that I've read about current events explained visually. Please subscribe, share, leave a message in the comments. I will respond. And I'm trying to get you some more Thomas Sowell videos. Short, simple, sweet. Here's the answer, if you've asked the right question. And that answer is maybe, possibly, we explore lowering, if not cutting taxes, because, say it with me, folks, taxes are theft. You know they are. You know they are.